Ladies and gentlemen, that is not J.C. Eyler. Let me give you a little backstory real quick. We talked about the kids have been a little nuts. I didn't get here until like 45 seconds ago. I do apologize about that, JC. We'll get that right, though. We'll go right into the introduction. That is hilarious. Oh, my God. Biggest fool up so far on the channel. I'm so sorry. All right. So I met this gentleman on, again, like Eddie, we had on last night, through TikTok. And what I've discovered is I was spending most of my time on YouTube, which fantastic people. Mm-hmm. Putting my feelers out. I've started to meet new people, and I'm so glad. So how are you tonight, JC Eyler?
I'm doing really well. Yeah, I'm doing pretty awesome. Nice and stuffed and everything.
There you go. Got some leftovers?
Had some leftovers.
Some leftovers.
Yeah.
Love it, dude. So where do you hail from? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm originally from Napa, California. Now I live in Northern California, but I've lived in a lot of places. I lived in Arizona, Tennessee, Texas, Brazil. You know, I was in combat for 2 years, so I've been around.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because anytime that I find an author who's a veteran, look, guaranteed I'm definitely gonna I want to talk to you because highest regards, most of my family was in. I would have been. I have a disease; they wouldn't let me in. But the highest respect to all veterans, all active service, all reserve service. You guys do a phenomenal thing.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
I was born in Edwards Air Force Base, California.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Wow,
yeah.
That's cool.
So when I have to write that down, though, it's not so awesome because it's freaking long, dude.
Right.
It's 40 freaking letters, man.
Yeah. I was born in Napa, so 4 letters. It's easy.
Now, where you live now, is that I'd be lying if I said I knew the geography of California very well. I don't remember California. I was very young. I grew up here in Ohio, but I was born on Edwards Air Force Base.
Right. Yeah. So Napa is just above San Francisco. And then where I live now, which is Shasta Lake, California, is way up north. It's 2 hours. It's a 2-hour drive to Oregon.
So there's trees instead of just sand.
Lots of trees. Yeah, tons of trees. It's beautiful out here. I live, it's less than 3 miles to the lake. Shasta.
Now, are you a wine drinker?
No, I mostly beer. I like beer. Lots of coffee. But if I'm gonna drink, it's beer. Nice.
I like reds, man. I'm a hard cider kind of guy, but I do like.
That's
beer
cool.
too.
Yeah. I like darker.
Guinness.
There's this Guinness. I enjoy Guinness, but more like a nut brown. That's my favorite. Yeah.
I have to say, I've tried it, and it's like every time I look at one of those boxes, there's the coffees, the chocolates. I get talked into it every time, and I just don't end up enjoying it. I try.
Yep.
Now, I love Guinness. I do. I love Guinness. But when it comes to those really hoppy, dark beers, it's just not me. Now, I respect it because I think it's very cool what they're doing with all of this artisanal stuff. And I wish I could get into it, but my taste buds
I don't like the IPAs, super hoppy. I'm not down for. That's not a sickness I'm down for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we'll start here because, like Eddie, it's kind of like a weekend theme that I didn't really have planned, but ended up being planned was kind of getting back to my roots, man. And that's talking to self-pub authors. And that's what I love doing the most. I love talking to all sorts of authors, traditional, but I love that self-pub authors do what they do. You guys do a thing that you have to be passionate about. You're not going to do it.
Right. Yeah. There's no one pushing you or anything like that. Yeah.
So, with your literature journey, kind of start at the beginning. Like, were you a reader as a young child, or if you weren't, when did you find reading and kind of fall in love with it?
Yeah, so I've been reading since I was a young child. I read the book that got me reading was Where the Red Fern Grows. So there we go. This one, I read it in the 5th grade. My teacher told me to read it, and it completely broke me and kind of set the bar for the type of happy, tragic story that I crave. And then ever since then, I wanted to be a writer, but I just like probably 99% of writers, I suffered from a big bout of imposter syndrome.
I
So,
feel you,
other people write, not me, right? So I went
Sure.
through my life reading a lot of fantasy. That's where my passion lies is fantasy. The more epic, the better. Wheel of Time. I read the Wheel of Time in high school, and it was like that's when I found like the style that I wanted to write, right? The quality. Like when you read, for me, when you read Robert Jordan, like Eye of the World, it's just so full of amazing, right? Like Tad Williams, right?
Yeah.
Like that's an author that crafts every sentence to
Whoa.
be exquisite, right? That's Tad Williams, and that's yeah. So
So, the more
yeah,
epic, the better.
uh-huh.
What is it about epic that you like? Is it a little bit of everything? Is it the characters, world building? Is it the arcs that may last for a very long time, such as Tad Williams and Robert Jordan too? Because those guys, right? They're freaks of the publishing world.
Yes,
15,
yes,
14 books. And then every single one of Tad's books are just huge, and they can't
hmm
be big enough.
right, exactly. Yeah, yeah, they're just amazing writers. So the aspects of fantasy that I love magic. I love dragons. That was that was probably the first thing that got me hooked. Was I probably 8 or so, and maybe younger, and I saw Dragon Slayer. It's a
Oh
1980s
yeah,
flick.
I love that movie.
Right? That was it. So that was that movie inspired George R. R. Martin's Dragons.
That's crazy. And there's another one.
Right?
Do you
Yeah.
remember Dragonheart?
Dragonheart.
Oh,
Love that
so
one.
good,
Yep.
man.
Yeah.
90s gems.
Exactly. So like those dark, like Dragon Slayer is dark, right? And um those are, yeah. So dragons, darkness, magic, and then like characters that uh like really tug at your heart.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, I really
So,
like that.
Where the Red Fern Grows, I was supposed to have read that in like the 8th grade, but I didn't.
Hmm
Is that an emotional story? I couldn't tell you what that's about, and I know that I'm breaking rules, I'm breaking laws here. Like, but I'm being
I mean,
honest.
it's an old book, so it's not. I'm not surprised.
Well, I need to read it.
It is a tragic book. It is so it's about a little boy who's in the Ozarks, and he gets these 2 red-bone coonhounds, and he enters, raises them from pups and enters them into competition and wins competition, and it just has like an amazing uh amazing life with these dogs.
Yeah.
And then the end happens, and then you're crying and weeping, and it's like, oh my gosh. So when I was in the 5th grade and I read this, I was like, I didn't know that stories could do this, right? Like
Yeah.
stories are supposed to be all happy and like stuff like that. And here was this book that dared to be tragic, and I thought, this is raw, real life. Like this is what real life is like. And
I think people get it twisted. They're like, oh, men readers, they don't want to cry. Oh no, if you got
oh
that book that can make us weep like a little baby, let's hear it.
yeah, especially
'Cause we
like
like to feel.
I grew up in a time where men couldn't show any emotion other than stoicism and
Mm.
anger, right? So So I craved stories that kind of unlocked those forbidden emotions. And those are that's what I like to also evoke in readers.
And I'm glad that that was a segue, because we're going to start talking about your work. So talk about Paths of Prophecy, and I'm sure you've got a copy handy.
Yeah.
Beautiful, man. I absolutely love the character on front. I love the typography. It's a beautiful big hardback. And are the paperbacks similar size?
Yep, paperbacks are the same 6x9.
Oh yeah, dude, I love that.
Yeah, right.
So tell us a little bit of an elevator pitch, if you will, of this one novel. And then if you would speak on the series, if it's going to be a series, if it is going to be a series, kind of the plans as far as that series go. So take over with it.
Yeah. So Paths of Prophecy is a dark epic fantasy set in an oppressive world. The hero on the cover, Michaela, she is left for dead and given the power of a god. She believes herself to be the light and savior of the world, but she discovers that her power came from an evil god. On the other side of the empire, this guy Kale, the most powerful magic user to ever live, he discovers that he's bound to this prophecy that he never believed in, and he has to change her path before she basically destroys the world.
Okay. So I've gotten a taste of that. I have not finished the book yet, but starting it, Michaela starts at some shit, guys. It starts off deep, man. Like, if you like a book that starts off with like a very vivid beginning, you're feeling the emotions, you're feeling empathy for the main character, or who you think may be the main character at the beginning, who I thought, and continue to think, because I'm not done with it yet, but just opening those first few pages is what hooked me in. And I think that that's a huge thing, man. So dark, gritty. What do you relate with dark? Me, it's like we're all fallible, right? We're all flawed. We're all going to make mistakes. And that's so easy to relate with, right? People are like, well, I don't understand this gray character love. It's like, it's very like kind of easy, and we're all flawed. And we kind of find ourselves in those flawed characters.
Yeah, I like the darkness because I live in a pretty happy, carefree life, right? I've lived a good life, and I've known that there's this darkness about humanity. There are dark people, right? Ed Gein and all these serial killers, right? So I've always been curious as to like why these people would do those things, like choosing between, oh, I can smell flowers and drink coffee and be happy, or there's option B, right? So I've just been kind of curious.
I think, isn't it? I feel like it's a very human thing to be curious about maybe something that we would assume we shouldn't be. I don't think that we shouldn't be curious about it, because I relate with that, because in my life, I've had moments like now where I can relate with, I'm safe, I'm fed, I have a carefree kind of attitude. But I've had those times in my life as well where I made my bed. I lied in it for a while, realized it's not comfortable, changed my life. And that change is so important in my life. And maybe that's just my kind of personal take on darkness, but it relates to yours as well. And I think it relates to all of us who enjoy a plot that's a little thematically dark, or characters who are flawed.
And it feels, like reading it in a book feels safe. It feels like you can explore these, like I said, forbidden areas in a safe way where no one's actually getting hurt. And you like in a movie, like, why is it that when Braveheart came out, it just exploded? Was because it was the first movie to dare to show the gore and the stuff that people are like, hey, this is kind of interesting, but like in a safe area, right? Yeah.
I love that part at the end too, where he shows everybody his ass, and he's like, I don't know what he says, but he's just like, "Come kiss it" or something like that. Like that's the ultimate manly comeback, and like you're about to probably die, right? Like you're going out. Those last words are epic.
Yep. Yeah. That
So
was. I
fun.
mean, it was a great. Yeah. It was definitely. It definitely changed. Like the direction of films, of dark films.
Boy, and it's funny that you say you brought up Braveheart because that's a movie I seen as kind of young. I didn't understand anything, and then
Yeah.
going back and kind of reliving that, it kind of knocks that home a little bit further. Those elements. So,
Yeah, I
wonderful.
remember. Like I remember reading. Let's see. It was a. I can't remember what series it was, but it was a D&D book, and one of the dwarf characters fell, and it was a very beloved character that falls into this ravine where there's this dragon and presumably dead, right? And I remember reading it and thinking and going through all the emotions of like, okay, yeah, that definitely happened. That character was gone. And then later on I felt that he survived in this very kind of like cheesy way. And I thought, I think it would have been better if, like, it sucked that he died, but it would have been better, right?
Yes,
Story would have
realistic.
been stronger for it. Yes. Yeah.
And also, I think also the time in which the story is being played out and when that dwarf may have died, and I don't know. I wish that I wouldn't have made fun of all my buddies growing up that played D&D because that's like all I want to do now. Like that sounds so much fun.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, and I grew up in the middle of the like in the middle of nowhere. So my neighbor was, thankfully my neighbor was about my same age. He was only 2 years older than me. So I had a friend, but other than, I mean,
if you grow up in the middle of nowhere, you have to take those. I mean, that's a huge win.
Yeah.
So, what do you have a name for? Of course you do, but what's the name of the series? And what are the plans for it?
So the series is called The Chronicles of Torgir. I am writing book 2. Book 2 I'm going through the edits right now, polishing it up.
Okay.
The book 2, The Black Breath, will be, I have it planned to be published before I go to Fan Fusion, which is in the first week of June.
Okay. Hey, man.
And then 6 books in the series.
6 books in the series. I love that, man. It's not a crazy amount. It's realistic. And this is kind of like the inevitable follow-up question. Do you plan a lot of this? Like, do you know how this series is going to end?
Yeah, so I'm definitely a plotter, right? I'm a planner. I have the book, the whole series is generally outlined. I know exactly how it's going to end. I know how all of the books are going to end. Mostly it's just filling in what happens in between. But yeah, I have all 6 books are.
That's incredible. So a couple things. As somebody I aspire to write, and I did not start young. I did not start reading young. I started at 29. I'm 34. So it's been a learning journey for me, and I learn with every single person that I talk to. And
I started about your age, so I got out of the Army, and I got out of the Army in 2007, and I moved to Rio de Janeiro. Well, the Rio de Janeiro, the state. I lived in this town called Angra dos Reis, and that's where I started writing. And I wrote my first scene, sent it to my buddy Ryan, who he's the cover artist.
Okay.
Yeah, him and I went to high school together. I sent the scene to him the first, like, I'm going to do this. I'm finally going to write my book. And he sent it back to me basically saying, no, man, you're not ready. You got a lot of work to do. Right.
That's a good buddy.
Yeah, it is. Very good. So I came back to the States and I went to college, and I met a lady who she's a published author. She was an editor for 15 years. She has 2 daughters that are pretty famous. and she kind of took me under, well, not kind of, she took me under her wing and gave me kind of a classical training in writing.
Wow.
Right. So for basically like 15 years, she has been helping me and getting me to like learn all of the stuff, all of the like get all the amateur writing out of me, get all the all the crap, and focus on like what good good sentence structure and whatnot, which is particular for me because I have an aphantasic mind, so I don't see things when I read.
Okay.
Yeah. So I
Yeah,
read
I'm
mostly
like half and half, I feel like.
right in the middle. Yeah.
I can feel that because there's a lot of books where it's like I'm not necessarily visualizing what's going on, but then there's
Mhm.
those authors who really bring it home for
Yeah.
everybody is absolutely like I was saying yesterday that I think one of the most individualized things in the world I've found so far. Now, I could be so off, but for me, it's that writing process.
hmm
Everybody is different.
Yeah. Everyone's different. And writing was like any skill, right? Art. I like to paint and stuff too. Art, writing, riding a bike, you name it. It just takes time and effort and hours behind the keyboard.
And I like that you brought up the inevitable stepping stones, right? Because nobody
Mhm.
writes unless you're a freak of nature, and they're out
Right.
there.
Right.
Nobody writes their best-selling book, right? As their first book,
Right.
and you have to get that out of you
Yes,
because you do. You need
absolutely.
critique.
Yep. Yep. You need to learn like stilted writing and forced writing. Stuff. For example, there's this scene in my book that has been kept under wraps. No one has spoiled it because it's it has an almost 100% cry rate, right? Yeah, yeah. It's
Wow.
devastating. It is devastating. Yeah. Like people, even I get choked up thinking about it, right? People get choked up. It started as total crap. Right? So the only reason that the scene was devastating in my first drafts was because of the nature of, like, for example, if a baby falls from somewhere, it's
Yeah,
devastating.
sure.
It's way more devastating if you know that baby's and the parents that suffered through like all of this, right? So that's what makes it tragic. And so that's what happened to this scene basically.
I
Yeah.
wow.
And
So
it was a friend of mine that told me he read it and he said, I would have thrown the book across the room if I didn't know you. You need to fix this.
okay.
Yeah.
Again, I think that's wonderful that you have somebody that can kind of
hmm
give you that I look, brother, I care about you and what you're
Yep.
putting out, so I'm going to give you my honest opinion rather than what you want to hear.
Yep.
It's hard to
Yeah.
do. It's not
You got to
easy.
have that. You got to have that. Yeah. And you got to be able to take it too.
I think that's it. Be able to take it.
hmm
Uh, History says that I've not been very good at taking criticism, and I think that it starts that way for a lot of us. It's a
Yes.
learned skill. Was it a learned skill for you?
Uh, kind of. It was more a matter of a change of perspective, right?
Mm,
So, um, like when I was in the army, I was a staff sergeant, and
what was your MOS?
I was a 19 Delta. I was a scout, reconnaissance
Okay.
specialist. Yeah,
Yeah, dude, you were there. You were in
yeah.
the
I
shit.
did. I was the one of the mount trainers for my unit, urban combat
Okay.
trainer.
That's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah, I
That's
did.
so I respect the shit out of that, dude.
And I was part of my unit, Alpha Troop 110 Cav in 2003 was part of the task force um, for Operation Red Dawn Objective Wolverine, which
Yeah.
was we caught Saddam Hussein. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was pretty
Dude.
badass.
Yeah, that's absolutely epically badass.
Yeah,
I'm a
so
huge war nerd, by the way.
nice. Okay, cool. Yeah, yeah. So in the Army, every time you do go out training and stuff, you have some officers and NCOs that evaluate, and they just try and help you be better, right? They tell you what you did wrong and what you did right and all the stuff, right? So from that, my perspective of why people are giving me feedback changed. It became more like a challenge for me. Like, okay, I'm going to write this for writing. I'm going to write this scene, and I'm going to see where I need to improve, because that is just going to help me like level up my writing, right? Like experience. Every time I do it, I'm just getting experience. It's making me better. And how you gotta that's how you gotta view the critique.
Anybody that's ever been that I've met that's been, in the military, even if it wasn't as in the stuff as you, there's a certain mentality. And what I've gained to understand about a lot of veterans is that you do what you have to do and you do it the best that you can. You take the criticisms as blessings, and it's a mindset that isn't shared throughout civilian society.
Right.
So I've always looked up to that, man, because it's something I feel like has to kind of be trained into you, and it does. I mean, and that's what boot camp's for.
Yeah, you just gotta, you can't have thin skin if you're going to be a creative, because like they say in Brazil, not even Jesus pleased everyone.
Amen.
Right? So
absolutely,
like the name any Plato, anyone, no one loves everyone.
Wouldn't it be weird if you put a book out? I'm just visualizing me putting a book out, and all of a sudden just there's no bad reviews. It's like, hold on.
Yeah.
Something's not right here. Because not everybody's going to click with every single book. Like, that's impossible.
Yeah.
We would not be unique as people if we felt that way. So
I have a friend that'll probably never read my book, because she, she's like in her late 70s now, but she read or watched Bambi when it first came out. Completely traumatized her.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Now she just wants feel good, happy endings, and
Bambi's hardcore though.
Dude, yeah.
It is.
Like the original Disney was no joke, man. That was like
babies watch that shit. I know I was young when I watched, and I'm like, hold on here. You're telling me? No, I get it, man. I really do. But I think through those losses, even though you're watching a movie as a young child, you feel like that's your loss at the moment. I think that teaches us a lot too. So it's a wonderful thing, and it hurts at the same time.
Absolutely.
So as far as I know you kind of said you're an outliner, a plotter. What does that? Do you have goals daily when you're in the grind writing a book, or do you?
Yeah. So
what is it for you?
So I try and write. So I have goals. I have word goals when I'm doing a rough draft or my first polished draft, and those are 2,000 words a day.
Okay, that's ambitious.
2,000 words a day, which can be super easy. Like there are times when I'll write 5,000 words. There are times when I'll just write 1,500 or whatever. But that's for the rough draft, and which is mostly like the lady said the other day on your interview. Rough draft, you're mostly just throwing ideas to see kind of what's going to stick when you go through the first edit. So that's what I do with my rough draft. And then my polished drafts, what I do is my goal is to have to do between 1 and 3 chapters a day.
Okay. Because at that point, there is the idea kind of down on paper.
Yeah. So like with the rough draft, I can get, so my rough draft for book 2 came out to be like 90,000 words.
Okay.
Rough draft. And then the first polish, it was at 155,000 words. the further edit, the polishing edits go really quick. Yeah, it's
So
mostly like taking the rough draft, and you have like all of these like mostly crappy ideas, and then some real gems, and then you flesh those gems out, and then you go through polishing it, basically. Yeah.
what would you say was one of the hardest things for you to? And me, I know the answer, but like, is it dialogue? What did you have any issues with dialogue? I have a lot of issues with dialogue and punctuation.
Dialogue. So dialogue is pretty easy for me for whatever reason. I don't know if it's for whatever reason. I won't even try and speculate. For me, what's difficult is I call them my friend Lisa and I call them SYA, scratch your ass, right?
Okay.
So when you write, prose have a certain beat and rhythm, right?
Yes.
So paragraphs also have that beat and rhythm and flow. And in order to make a beautiful paragraph or a beautiful sentence, it requires certain aspects, like kind of like an intro and then some meat, and then you have to have some sort of ending, right? Something that'll flow into the next paragraph. And so sometimes what you need is like, hi, Bob said, and then something like he needs to do something so that the beat will flow into his next sentence, right? And so those somethings we call scratch your asses, because they can be something benign, but they have to be something, and that can be like head nods. People will do lots of head nods or eye rolls or something. So getting those and turning them into something more than just a head nod, that's the hardest part.
This adds to what I was so excited about this weekend for. Yesterday, and then also the day, I always get really wonderful kind of feedback. But when I talk to self-pub authors,
Mhm.
I don't get run-of-the-mill answers, right? Not saying that traditionally published authors, but usually
Mhm.
a traditionally published author has went through the credentials that they're supposed to have, this and that, and they know what to say.
Mhm.
For me, I relate with those very intimate answers, what you just gave, those scratch your ass moments in a sentence in a paragraph. Because, yeah, if I'm reading, let's see, one of the most recent ones, what was it? Mr. Norrell, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, by, I forget her name. Wonderful writer, Piranesi, she wrote. She has a way of dancing through a book. And I think every author has that dance. And when it clicks
Mhm.
with the reader,
Mhm.
it really comes through.
Yes.
And it's
Yeah.
not something I thought about.
Yeah. Like, you know, writing a novel is a lot more than just writing words on a page. Writing a novel is what you can do with a novel you can't do with a movie. So here is one of the main things, the main difficulties that I had to overcome initially was understanding that scenes on a movie work because they're a movie. Scenes in a book work because they're in a book. That's why there's such a difficult time with a movie to cinema crossover,
Yes.
right? So I'll give you a quick example. In the movie, in order to draw up tension, they'll use tropes like the lady fumbling for her keys and it's night, and the street lamp goes out, and she's alone in the parking lot, and there's someone behind her walking up. She's like, oh my gosh, and she's walking up, and then and then it's her husband, right? And she's like, oh. You
It's
can't
like
do that in a book.
all this
No
tension.
you can't do that in a book because no one wants to read 10 pages of nothing, right?
Yes. I
So
mean, you see facial cues. You see that.
yes. Yeah,
Visual is
so
always more powerful in certain aspects.
yes. So in a book, that's the reason that scene doesn't work is because nothing happens, right? The build up is just like this, oh, nothing sandwich. In a book, people are invested in a book, they're committing to reading your work, and reading a book is a huge commitment of time,
It
especially if
is.
you're a slow reader like me. I'm a really slow reader, right?
I-
So if I'm going to read a 10 to 25 page chapter, something had better happen at the end, and it better not be a misunderstanding or like, oh, I misidentified my husband,
yeah, dude.
right? Yeah. So learning what works in a book is different from what works in a movie.
I love that point. I love that point. And as again, one of those things that I love to hear. And I think it comes from a self-pub author a lot more authentically. Also, I think that a book, if you can capture emotion or tension through the written word, which I didn't even think was possible for me until I picked up a book, which I think anybody who thinks that, test it. Like you'll find it. I promise.
Yep.
And it did. It happened for me. I'll tell you the book. And everybody who's been watching me knows this, and they're so tired of hearing it. Ordinary Monsters by J.M. Miro.
That's
So
awesome.
good. Oh, you like it?
I haven't. No.
Oh man. It took me. But that was it. That's what it was for me. And I don't expect anybody to have my experience, but I do think there's other people out there who will enjoy certain things that I do. Also with a visual, it's also an audible, right? Because you've got the violins that are getting like tension. You're building it. With a book, it takes a lot more skill to gain that tension.
It does. Yes, it takes a lot more tension. It takes a lot more skill. It's a lot like weaving a web that is asymmetrical. Right. So
yeah,
you can't
dude.
just snip a line and expect the web to work. If you snip one line, you have to add a line somewhere else. Like you have to weave this. One change in your novel can have a huge butterfly effect.
Thank God for editors.
Yeah, thank God for editors. Yeah. That's for sure.
Cinna Palm was going on. She always asks friggin' wonderful questions, and I'm like, why didn't I think of that? This is one. How much does your experience in combat influence your storytelling?
A lot.
I can imagine, man.
A whole lot. Yeah. The smells, the feeling, the touch, probably mostly the smells and the sounds, right? So the sounds and smells that I experience in combat, I guess the rush, all of that plays a huge part in my combat scenes, building up tension, getting the ick factor. All of that plays a huge role. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, man.
And then also, I will say this too. Actual combat is quick, it's chaotic, and I feel like that, and it's visceral. It's extremely visceral, and that's how I feel it should come across. Yeah.
I have to say, and in my experience, just hearing that, like, and I listen to a lot of Sean Ryan. I love his podcast where he has a lot of combat veterans on, and to even act like a civilian could even think about, or even like, there's no way that we can understand anything about what goes on in those moments. But what I can sense as a civilian is how much I respect, and especially those who learn, who are gifted the ability to continue to learn, right? Because so many wonderful people. I think we could go down a long journey on that, because I just respect it, and I love it so much that that I get to talk to people who have had that experience, and I end up just kind of gushing the whole time. But yeah, I love how you talked about that, man.
Yeah.
So your processes, your inspirations, Who would you say is one of your biggest inspirations as a writer? Maybe somebody that has their hand in the way that you write.
Robert Jordan. I think the Robert Jordan, The Wheel of Time. So, probably okay. So 3. I'll just stick to fantasy because there's Wheel of Time or Where the Red Fern Grows. But David Eddings, Bulgarian, Wheel of Time, Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time, and then Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. Right. So Tad Williams. So David Eddings, the Bulgarian is basically a fantasy version of Where the Red Fern Grows, minus the heartbreak, right? So
I have not read that. I've read the other 2. I haven't read David Eddings, so I'm glad you're kind of going into it.
It's a very fun read. It's about a young boy who kind of grows up, and he's a very powerful wizard type person. But the writing style, David Eddings' writing style, Robert Jordan's writing style, and then Tad Williams. So Robert Jordan, his technique, he kind of bounds with his paragraphs. So he'll have like descriptors that will lead the reader to want to know more, and then he'll interject another paragraph that will do the same thing, and then the next paragraph or so will answer the questions that you had from the first one, and then he basically keeps doing that. Robert Jordan does.
I feel like I get addicted, and I am.
It is.
I've read the first 4 of Wheel of Time, and I know it may not seem like I'm addicted because I have stopped for a while, but I promise I leave those savor. Like I try to savor those important series that I find for myself. It doesn't mean that like I try to find everybody else's important series.
Right.
But there's a reason that a lot of people love that series, and I get it.
Yep.
Man.
It's like, it's like any fine art, great art should leave people wondering why they love it so much. Right?
Ooh, yeah.
Like the Mona Lisa. What is it about the Mona Lisa that everyone what is it about it? I don't know.
Smiling, is she not?
Right. The Sistine Chapel. It's beautiful, but what about? I mean, there's more than just the strokes and stuff. There's more to it, right? So
into the hand, maybe.
Robert Jordan, his sentences don't just do one thing. It's not just talking about the feel of the clothing. In one sentence, in a very smooth, gentle way, the reader will get a sense of a tactile sensation, a visual color or whatever, and some like a bunch of different things in one sentence. And as a reader, it just flows easy, and you don't understand necessarily why. It's just kind of reading so easy, and
and I've gained to understand that reason why people that have written books tell those of us who haven't written books, write what you know and also write what you want to read, because it just makes more sense than anything, because everybody has their own way of telling a story. Even if everybody on earth wrote the same exact story about, had the same characters, every single one would be different. I think every person who decides to grab a pen or a keyboard has a opportunity to share the story they want to share, even if it has the exact same characters, which is so fun, man.
It is. The Romeo and Juliet, I think, is one of the most retold stories ever. And you could tell it again. So that's the thing about like tropes is 100% of every book uses, or every story, movie, everything uses tropes. And the way that we tell the tropes, the way that we mix the tropes, that's how we make it interesting.
So my wife, I had to say, she is very much on the same exact spectrum as me. That's my wife right there. So I just want to let you know that she's right there with me.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Ashley. That's awesome. Thank you.
You know, it was so cool. We have a 5-year-old. That's our oldest. Anytime he sees somebody with a veteran hat, he stops them and says, "Thank you for your service." Man, that's proud cool. Dad moment.
That is, that like, especially from kids, man, that like any attention from children, right, is like
Yeah. Well,
make
I
your day.
think that they understand too that there's like this part that will never understand unless we take that venture in our own lives one day. But Dad
Mhm.
has kind of explained it as much as he can, and he has hella respect for these people. So I feel it's only the most wonderful thing to kind of follow. And
Yeah,
kids are the
yeah.
best.
Yes, they are. I 100% agree. Kids are, yeah, they're super adorable.
Uh, and that's funny. There's like 9 million different ways I could continue this, but I have to. I've learned to kind of stay on track. I always love the every now and then journey we take away from the conversation. Those are so much fun, but
Yes.
I've learned to kind of shut my mouth sometimes because I could talk for 9.5 years. So, what are some goals that you have for yourself? If you do, if you don't, that's fine too. But what are some goals that you have for yourself by the end of next year, end of 2025?
By the end of 2025, to have book 3 rough draft, but basically book 3 almost done. Um, that's, let me think. That's kind of it. Like my life right
That's
now,
huge.
I live alone, so it's pretty easy. My son, he's 20. What year are we in? 2024. So yeah, he's 24 years old, living in Tucson. He's in the Air Force.
Okay.
Yeah, he called me up and he's like, Dad, I want to join the military. I was like, no, go to school. And he's like, no, I'm going to join the military. And he said,
That's where I was going, was Air Force.
yeah. So he said, I'm either going to be a Black Hawk mechanic in the Air Force, PSYOPs for the Army. And I said, if you do PSYOPs, I'm going to disown you. Go Air Force. So that's what he did. Yeah.
Hey, all of my ever it's crazy when I say all, I literally mean all except one. He was National Guard. Retired from the Air Force. My dad was a mechanic. He's still a mechanic on planes. He's got a wonderful career from that,
Yeah.
and that's what I wanted to do. So I think that's wonderful, man. So I also the goal. Look, I talk to people who are like, man, it took me 15 years to write a book, or it's like if you've got this flow going, if you've got this pace that you're setting for yourself and it's working, that's wonderful, man. I love to hear that. And it's also cool because just because of the chance I saw a video of yours, right? Or you saw a video of mine, or I saw a video of whoever. We had this opportunity to meet and kind of talk what we all love. And that's crazy to me. The odds are very, very low.
Yep. Yeah. I think it's really cool. It's,
So what are you working on and kind of what's also a huge part of you dropping book 1 is that audio. Huge. Cinnapalm, I know you've been waiting for this moment in the conversation. She always is. Guys, I see your comments. I'm so slow. I'm looking for the questions. If they apply to the conversation and not just the chat, I will throw them up, I promise. Cinnapalm, she is the audiobook queen. That's what she does. She loves audiobooks. So anytime that I'm talking with a lot of self-pub authors, it's something that not necessarily comes along with the book.
Yeah, I mean, it's expensive,
baby.
Yeah, audiobooks expensive. If you want to get Grace Noble did my audiobook. She's like super amazing.
She's great.
Yeah, she is so good. And she's going to do book like all my books. She's going to be the voice of the Chronicles of Torgir.
I love that, man. From the first sentence, love her voice, and I think she captures emotion very well in emphasis, which is what I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to be a narrator, so I get to learn from people like that, man. And then I just hope one day that I can capture that. So it's very inspiring, and I think it's also, I have to say, when there's a self-pub author who releases a novel and an audiobook at the same time, it comes with this certificate that's imaginary that says, I really believe in my work. Not
Yes.
that other people, if they can't afford it, I understand that. Like, it's very expensive to produce an audiobook.
Mm-hmm.
But when you can, it does come along with that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's great because not everyone can read, and I want everyone to be able to enjoy the story, not just
Look, if it's up to me, I'm picking up the physical book.
Mhm.
But right now, it's not up to me. Like, there's no time to read a physical book unless I want to read the same sentence 4,000 times.
Right. Yeah.
So an audiobook is really what's saving it for me every night. That's what I do. I look forward to it. It's like when I'm done with my chats, or if I don't have it yet, like when I go to bed, it's audiobooks until I fall asleep.
That's awesome.
And I really enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I haven't asked this one in a while. I did. I asked Shauna, but before her, I hadn't asked it in a while. Who is someone you would recommend I chat with? Somebody maybe you look up to that you feel I could learn from?
So you can see if you can get Matthew Wolf. I met him at Fan Fusion, him and I, and then Christopher Patterson.
Ooh, okay.
So
2 new names.
Matthew Wolf and Christopher Patterson. So here's Matt's.
Ooh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, he's a really cool dude. And then Christopher Patterson. It's funny, I always call him Pattinson, like Robert Pattinson, you know?
Yeah, no, it's easy.
But yeah, so those two, we were at Fan Fusion, and there was like this impromptu panel that opened, and the Fan Fusion people asked if we would do just like a panel, and so we did it, and then it was awesome, and we plan on doing it this coming year too, and yeah, it was cool.
So are those 2 gentlemen also self-pub authors?
Yes. Yeah.
There it is, man. It's captured me already. I love that.
Yeah, they're both super awesome. And then Will White.
Oh yeah, that would be cool.
He's the guy. He inspired me to self-publish. I was, chomping at the bit to traditionally publish. And I met Will White at DragonCon. Me and my buddy Trevor. We were standing in line, and he just came and chatted with us. And
he was an anomaly.
Yeah, he his whole family. He basically employs his whole family. And
good for him. I love that.
You can't really do that if you traditionally publish because you have
people,
right? So that's
oversight, right?
What's that?
There's got to be like some sort of oversight if you're traditional. Again, there's zero knocking on any form of publishing that you go, but inevitably certain things come with it. And I'm just speaking what I've heard.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah.
If you're employing your family as a traditional published author, I don't know if that oversight's there, because look, you go to Walmart and there's a lot of trends that we see, and that's on purpose, and that's what people are buying. And what I love about the self-pub realm, if you will, there's not a single story that I've read so far, and man, I've read a lot of self-pub, and a lot of it is just absolutely out of this world quality. I don't ever get a similar story ever.
Right.
Ever.
Yep.
That's going to be the thing.
Yeah. So, as you're writing, I'm all for, I am a sucker for people following dream. I'm following my dream. This is my dream from the 5th grade to publish. And I am all for people following the dreams. You should 100% write, just start writing. You have my email. You can send me some stuff. So yeah, just start writing, follow your dreams. Like, just do it. Don't worry about if it's going to sound like something else or be inspired or whatever, because it's going to use it. Yeah. There is.
I love that. I can translate exactly what you're saying. I love that you're inspired by somebody that's willing to say, I've got the balls today and tomorrow to say that I have a dream and I'm going to follow that dream. even if the odds are stacked against me, I'm going to be fulfilled. And to follow that is super absolutely gangster move, man. I love that.
Yeah, I'm all for people following their dreams and helping out when I can.
Josh, you had a question. I want to answer that. Question for both of you dudes. If you could choose one fantasy book series to adapt to a TV screen, what would you choose? Dude, that's like that's up there with like favorite author, right?
Yeah. Let me think here. Oh, you know what?
Ooh,
so for me, it would probably have to be the twins. It's the Dragonlance Twins trilogy.
is that Anne McCaffrey?
Yep. Oh,
Okay.
no. Sorry, no. It's Tracy, Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard of them too.
So their Chronicles trilogy was the trilogy were the books that got me into fantasy, and then their the series that came after that, the trilogy that came after that, the Twins, was the one that showed me that I could become completely emotionally invested in an imaginary character, right? Because for me it was different than Where the Red Fern Grows, because Where the Red Fern Grows was like a real boy, right?
Yeah.
The Chronicles
He could have been my neighbor. Like that would have made sense if he was my neighbor.
Exactly. Chronicles of Dragonlance are just imaginary D&D characters, and discovering that oh my gosh, this like imaginary dude can make me cry. That's awesome.
Oh, in the most manly freaking way possible, dude. I love that, dude. I would have to narrow it down between a couple. I don't know if I could choose. It would have to be either Sun Eater or I also think James Rollins' Moonfall Saga would be super cool, man. Or his Sigma Force novels, if you're into thrillers. Like, he is truly like, look, Ordinary Monsters did it for fantasy. Like, that's why we're talking right now.
Mm-hmm.
But when it came to books, and like the very first book I tried myself on, it was James Rollins.
Nice.
And he delivered. And I love all of his, whether he started as James Clemens doing the fantasy thing like he did, and then going to James Rollins pseudonym and doing the thriller techno type thing that he does now. But it was cool to see him also be able to have James Rollins, that pseudonym, and them say, hey, let's go for that fantasy series. It is so good. If you guys haven't read the Moonfall Saga book 3 is not out yet, but it's about to come out very soon. Book 1 and 2 are going to keep your mind busy enough for the time in between.
Nice. Yeah. Okay.
Very, very good one. And it's also, I'd say, the main character has a disability and she gets rid of it. Like, so it's just inspiring. I don't know. There's so many elements, right? I could probably sit and name a million. I guess we're at the point now where I just want to say, man, I'm just so thankful that you agreed to kind of hang out and talk about your story, dude, because it says, and I learn so much. And I know it's not just me. So many people in the chat, I can see them question after question, and those who will watch it on the replay will have questions in the comments. And it really is the epitome of what I want to do here.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that.
So again, man, thank you for letting me borrow you for a little bit.
Of course.
I always say too, if I've had you on once, I would absolutely love to have you on again. So all of you that were here live as well, thank you for being here. Tomorrow I am chatting with, dude, I'm so bad at that. I had it right before we came on. I'll announce it on X because I have a shit for brain. And if you catch it on a replay, thank you so much as well. Leave your favorite part in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, of course. And we will see you, I believe, tomorrow. Y'all have a wonderful night. Thank you again, JC.
Thank you. Yeah, it was fun.